Paper was like gold in medieval times.
Oh, not tobacco, sugar.
That everything we thought we knew about the world might turn out to be completely wrong.
There are so many more innocent people in prison than people realize.
They arrested me for the murder of my best friend.
When I got arrested, I kept on saying I was innocent. What are you doing? What are you doing?
It's not fair that he had to stand in that courtroom and accept guilt for something that he didn't do.
There's no physical evidence linking him to this crime.
And there was absolutely no investigation.
Nobody cares that you did not commit that crime.
No one believed me.
He shouldn't have been in jail for 34 years.
You gotta let him go. That's not him.
You're free to go. Thank you very much.
In the early 90s, American criminal defense attorneys created a network of international associations called the Innocence Network.
I'm free now. It's been 30 years.
Their mission, to fight injustice by exonerating innocent people and helping the justice system correct its mistakes.
This is a worldwide human rights movement.
Anybody can be mistakenly identified. And how many times do we have to see this?
I really don't know what they said to release me.
Today, I filed a motion to null pros or dismiss the charges against Louis Vogel.
What are you looking forward to the most?
Getting to know my family.
Until the judge says you are absolutely free, there's always nervousness that it's going to go wrong.
And then you have to trust that's going to go well, but you don't know.
For many convicts who claim to be a victim of a miscarriage of justice, these attorneys are their last chance, their last resort.
So, it felt so good actually having people that believed in my innocence.
I couldn't do this without them.
I thought I was going to die in jail.
I believe that one day they would come and say, you know, we made a mistake, we were wrong.
You know, I kept fighting for my freedom for 34 years.
I would have never believed this stuff is true. Not until you live it.
Is this the letter that he wrote to them? Oh my God. Okay.
Dear Innocence Project, I'm serving life for a homicide and rape that I'm innocent to.
I'm completely innocent of this crime. I wouldn't waste her time if I wasn't innocent.
This nightmare has been going on almost 17 years for me. Please help end this injustice.
God.
I would be very grateful if you could help me to get the DNA test ran to prove that I am innocent.
He's written that to us, you know, and it went from 17 years to 20 years to 25 years to 30 years.
I thank you for your time, he says. It's just, that's crazy.
You're free to go. Thank you very much.
Since the early 90s, attorneys from the Innocence Network have freed 372 wrongfully convicted people in the U.S., thanks to advances made in DNA science. 20 of them were on death row. Together, these former detainees spent 4,563 years in prison for crimes they did not commit.
Think about how you would go through this. Like, would you be able to survive that experience?
It's the best job in the world.
I think the problem with this job is it never feels like enough.
The reasons behind these wrongful convictions are often similar. They are mostly false testimonies, confessions extracted under duress, improper forensics, and for the vast majority, eyewitness misidentification. This is what happened to the detainee whose story you will discover today.
I found out that they're accusing him of rape. And I'm like, he couldn't have done it. You know, there's no way he could have done it.
The rape kit's destroyed, so there's nothing for us to do, and we have to close out your case.
He told me, I just want to come home. I just want to come home.
Alan Newton claims to be a victim of a miscarriage of justice. Vanessa Potkin works at the Innocence Project in New York. She agreed to defend him. This is their story. Vanessa Potkin joined the Innocence Project New York in 2002. She had already contributed to the release and exoneration of several clients and started working on the Alan Newton case in 2004. The crime at the center of this case dates back to June 23, 1984.
In 1984, a woman in the Bronx was sexually assaulted. In the middle of the night, she had gone to a little neighborhood store, a bodega, and when she was leaving the store, a man grabbed her, pulled her into a car, took her to 2 different locations where he raped her, and it was a very brutal crime. He also cut her eye and blinded her in one eye during the attack.
I was at work, and I got a phone call that Al got arrested. The cops came and they took Al. So when I got home later that day, I found out that they're accusing him of rape, robbery, assault.
When I found out that Al got arrested, I knew he was coming home right away.
And I'm like, he couldn't have done it. You know, there's no way he could have done it.
This was back in 1984. Alan he was in a relationship. He was engaged to be married with a woman who had children, and they spent that evening going to see Ghostbusters, and then they returned to her home, and he was watching TV, hanging out with his fiancée and family for the evening. And unfortunately for Alan, when he was young, he got into a fight. As a result of this initial fight, his photograph was kept by the police.
Well, you know, we didn't grow up in the best environment, you know, and he's no different than anybody else. We all did things. You know, we all got into trouble. But after graduation, Al started working. And, you know, he started leaving the streets alone, and, you know, he was working. He was doing okay for himself until all of this stuff happened.
Unfortunately for Alan, anytime a crime happens where he roughly is in the group of people that matches the description, his photograph is included in photographs that the witnesses then see. So, you know, any encounter with the police, no matter how small, then puts you at great risk for a wrongful conviction.
They picked up my brother, who had no connections to that area, to that woman. They said he was driving a car, he didn't know how to drive, you know.
This is the thing. He doesn't drive. None of us knew how to drive at the time. None of us knew how to drive. I just said that he's gonna be home soon. They're gonna find him innocent.
You know, we know he didn't do it, but by the time we went to trial, it was a tidal wave, you know.
At the start of his trial in May 1985, Alan had already spent 332 days in prison. The charges were based solely on 2 eyewitness accounts, the victim and the employee of the store in front of which the victim was abducted.
So you had 2 people walk into court in 1985 and say that Alan was the person who committed this crime. However, even at the time, there was reason to question those identifications. Before he went to trial, there was a hearing, which is called a Wade hearing, on the eyewitness identification, on the victim's ID. And during that hearing, the victim identified him, but that night she called the prosecutor and she said, "I'm not sure that Alan is the person who did this to me. I'm not sure of my identification." In addition to that, the eyewitness, the woman who had been working in the bodega, indicated that she was not sure if Alan was the person who did this and couldn't make an identification. But nevertheless, the trial went forward, and when the jury came in and heard the case and the victim testified at trial, she identified Alan as the person who attacked her.
The victim, do you see the man in court? There he is. The witness, do you see the man in court? There he is. They both changed their story.
So even in 1985, we knew that there were problems with the identifications in this case, but there was absolutely no investigation.
The attorney that we had, oh man, I forgot his name all of a sudden. He was a bum. He was a bum. You know, what we found out about him was that he asked for a little bit of money because he didn't plan on doing much. That's what we were told afterward, and that's exactly what he did. He didn't do anything.
And the jury found him guilty. And I was, no, you're kidding. Yeah, he's going to go to jail. They gave him 15 to 40.
You know, he was just in his 20s at the time. He was, you know, on a road to be married, and he was building a family and a career for himself. He was working at a bank, and next thing you know, he's being, you know, put on a bus and sent away to, you know, some very tough prisons.
Al called Tony Collect on his mobile phone, and we were able to speak to Al. And I said, Al, you coming home soon, and when you come home, I want you to sue the pants off these people. Al said, Bobby, I don't care about no money. I just want to come home. I just want to come home.
Despite the prosecution's weak case, on May 31st, 1985, Alan was sentenced to 40 years in prison.
The first time I drove up to see Al, well, you know, I always get that feeling of nervousness before the trip. Stomach feel a little queasy, but you get over it. And no matter how many times I went to see him, I had the same feeling of nervousness. Because I'm going to go see Al, and I'm usually not alone. I usually have somebody with me. So they're always excited also to see him.
This is 1986, May 17th, 1986. That's Alan. He's on his prison. He's wearing prison gear. He has on a pair of green khaki pants. That's Tony, his brother, standing right here.
Sing Sing. Motherfucking Sing Sing.
You know, the travel there was longer than the visit. That's what pissed me off. You know, it took us like 3-4 hours to get there, and we only spent maybe 45 minutes to an hour with him, then we had to go home. All right, visit is over. Time to go home. And everybody had to, okay, I'll see you later. All right, man, you know. And then, you know, it's like sad when you're going, that's not his home temporarily, but you going home and he's staying there. And that's that. So at that time, we thought he would be coming home soon, yes.
And next thing you know, one day ended up a month ended up 6 months into a year, and never figured it was going 5 years. We never thought it would be 10 years, and when we turn around, it's 5 and it's 10, then 15, but it was never something we were looking forward to. We always thought that something would happen that would exonerate him. You know, you see those shows on TV where somebody's railroaded, being accused for a crime they didn't commit, and you think it's just a TV show until it really happens, it hits home, and then you find out that the world is real. What's on TV is real.
The Innocence Project did not yet exist at that time, so Alan and his loved ones could only count on one another. A few months after being sentenced, Alan tried everything possible to prove his innocence from his cell.
In the first couple of months, my brother grew up. You know, he concentrated on school and on law. He got his associate's degree and he graduated. They had a graduation, so I brought the kids, my sisters, their kids, and it was a bunch of us up there. But it was good to see him do that because he wasn't wasting his time and letting the time do him. He did the time, you know. That's the saying that people say in the streets, you know.
Studying in jail. That was a beautiful thing because he had all his work, all his case work. He was able to present it to his attorney, and his attorney was able to pick it up from there. So
Alan is really unusual in the sense that he litigated his case from the beginning. As early as 1988, you know, he was asking for forensic testing. He was ahead of the whole DNA revolution. You know, he was saying, wait a second, you know, at the time of trial, they said there was sperm in this rape kit and nobody ever tested the sperm. You know, maybe that can prove my innocence. So Alan goes into court asking for some basic blood typing.
In 1988, Alan had already spent 4 years, or 1,460 days in prison. From the confines of his cell, he had high hopes for the test results. He received them a few months later. The disappointment was great. No analyzable biological evidence was found. Nothing in the rape kit. Nothing on the clothes. Alan's hope of proving his innocence faded. But in 1994, a new opportunity arose. Science had evolved, and the state of New York passed a new law facilitating convicts access to DNA testing of evidence in their file.
As soon as that law is passed, Alan's back in court and he's filing a motion on his own asking for DNA testing. And the state comes back and says, I'm sorry, we can't find your rape kit. It's missing.
He filed a lot of motions, and every motion he filed was turned down with flimsy excuses like,
it was destroyed in a fire or it was lost.
It's just unbelievable what happens in this case. The state comes back, they have a sworn statement, an affidavit from somebody in the New York City Property Department saying, I personally searched for the evidence and there is nothing there. And so again, the door is slammed on Alan because there's no evidence to test.
It was hard. It's hard. It's hard just thinking about it, you know. It's hard thinking about it.
In 1988, the rape kit was available, but science was not advanced enough to test them. 10 years later, identification techniques had evolved, but the rape kit that could exonerate him had disappeared. Alan had no other options. By then, he had been in prison for 14 years. In the mid-90s, while Alan was fighting to prove his innocence, two New York attorneys, Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld, were in the middle of setting up the Innocence Project. When Tony heard of this association, he immediately decided to get in touch. Vanessa was the first attorney to answer.
Tony called me all the time. I started at the Innocence Project in 2000, and shortly after I started at the Innocence Project, a brand new lawyer, I would get phone calls from Tony Newton saying that his brother needed our help. And we have a very long backlog of cases. There's so many people who are writing into the Innocence Project asking for our help. Each month, we get 250 letters, new requests from convicted people in prison throughout the country saying, I'm innocent, please help me.
She told us we have to wait on the waiting list. So I waited. We had nothing to lose. But when she called me back, then that's when she told me they're ready to take the case. What was funny was that every attorney that I talked to wanted a whole lot of money. They wanted all my money with no results. And some of them would take the money and tell us that there's nothing they can do after they took the money. But here's Vanessa Potkin and the Innocence Project. They work for free. I love y'all. They work for free. They knocked everything out, no problems. You know, and I said, here it is, the only people that we could trust is working for free. The people we paying all this money to, they're ripping us off.
You know, I think with Alan in particular, a lot had to do with Tony and just, you know, the connection that they had, the love that they shared, and all of the advocacy that Tony was doing to try to help his brother. It just really, you know, struck me.
My friends would always tell me, all I used to talk about is I got to get my brother out, but I never looked at it like a mission, you know. Just something I have to do.
When Vanessa formally agreed to defend Alan Newton, he had already spent 20 years in prison. She took up his case where he had left off.
You know, when Alan was trying to get the DNA testing on his own, they're saying that the evidence doesn't exist. None of these items can be located, and other items were most likely destroyed in accordance with standard police procedures. So I believed that it was lost, I believed it was destroyed, and it was not part of what we were going to be able to work on.
In the absence of the rape kit, Vanessa focused her investigation on the tests of the victim's clothing, both on tests that had proved inconclusive in the past, and on a pair of jeans found since, which had never been tested.
So at that point, I've reached out to the district attorney's office in Bronx County, and they agreed to allow us to re-examine the victim's clothing. And so the clothing was packaged up and was sent off to a laboratory in California. And they did this process called mapping, where, you know, they look at every inch of the pants and, you know, really systematically go through to see if there's any biological material. And, you know, this laboratory has had great success in finding evidence where other laboratories have examined the evidence and not found it. So I was very optimistic that there would be something there.
You know, I said this is going to prove him innocent.
That's what kept our hopes alive.
Unfortunately, there was no sperm on the pants. So this was a huge disappointment because, you know, it seemed that the only thing we could do in the case without the rape kit is hope that we could test something on the pants.
I did a lot of crying, a lot of heartache, a lot of wanting to go and find somebody and hurt them, connected to the case. My brother used to keep me calm. He used to calm me down.
Tony was visibly affected. The swabs had disappeared. The tests on the clothes led nowhere. In June 2005, for lack of new leads, the Innocence Project was forced to close the Alan Newton case. By then, Alan had been behind bars for 21 years and would have to serve another 19.
A part of being somebody's lawyer is having to deliver very, you know, tough news to Alan and to his family. And so I went to have the conversation with Alan to tell him, we didn't find any male DNA on the pants, your rape kit is gone, so I have to close out your case. That is how the conversation should have gone. Didn't quite go that way. I couldn't actually bring myself to do it. You know, Alan just, we believed that he was innocent. So I felt like I couldn't really close out Alan's case without having looked for the evidence myself.
So Vanessa appealed one last time to Elisa Conderman, the person in charge of the Sexual Crimes Special Unit. She asked her to look once more for the rape kit, officially declared missing. The request was granted.
And then the waiting process began on my end and on Alan's end. The summer went by, we went into the fall. I went back and forth. Should I reach out to her? I was dying to know if anything was progressing with the search, but at the same time, I was afraid that she would come back and say they have no rape kit, and then that really would be the end of the line for Alan's case at the Innocence Project.
Alan's fate now depended on the appeal's final outcome. Together with his loved ones, he waited anxiously for 5 months. On November 7th, 2005, they had their answer by email. After 22 years of detention, Alan's fate depended on a few lines on a screen.
She responds, Monday, November 7th, found the kit. That is amazing! I'm so happy to hear this. This was never the response that I thought I would receive at all. It was amazing. So that's the golden document. That document should be framed. Huh. I couldn't believe it. I never expected them to find the rape kit.
I was happy because it was finally found. The city kept saying that they couldn't find it, that it didn't exist. They gave us every excuse in the world. So when she found it, I was happy because I know the clock was ticking.
But I was glad that it was found. And that's sad that they didn't make any really effort to look for it, you know? They didn't make no effort to look for it.
In New York City alone, the place where they store the evidence, they claim they had a flood, they had, fires, for all I know, locusts, pestilence, all kinds of biblical type visitations that made it hard for them to find it. But now we know from Alan's civil case that there really was a deliberate indifference to looking for this evidence.
At that point, I didn't even care what the explanation was. I was so happy that they found the rape kit. And so I didn't even ask her at that point exactly how they could have found it. I was just beyond elated that they had it. But I am very cautious, because of the fear that they could not get a conclusive result. So I'm very cautious in telling Alan when I tell him they found the rape kit. I'm like, this is amazing. But we have to be cautious because we don't know, the laboratory still has to find the DNA and it can't be degraded. They need to get a result. So I tried to moderate his expectations.
8 months later, on June 14th, 2006, the DNA test results finally arrived.
When they did the DNA test, they found out that it didn't match my brother, and he was coming home soon. He was coming home soon.
Alan Newton is excluded as a contributor to the mixture of the DNA identified from the cervix swab in this case. That was his freedom.
I love you, Vanessa Parker, and the Innocence Project. Yeah.
And that was that, We brought him home, we brought him out. And he got the respect that he was due. So it worked out for the better, I'm glad that he got the Innocence Project involved.
None of these prisons are no good. Glad my brother's home, don't have to deal with none of this anymore. No more mess. No more mess. No more mess. He's home.
On July 6th, 2006, Alan Newton was officially cleared, freed after 22 years in prison for a crime he did not commit.
I was trying to get released for 2 decades, and the first person that told me I was being released was Vanessa. Naturally, she was going to be the first one that get my emotional response.
It was so beautiful. It's just, it is emotional to think about because when you go back to the time and you just think that someone was literally rotting away in prison for decades. It's awful what happened to him. And I feel like, it's such a beautiful moment because the community recognized the victory in the day.
Yeah, I like that moment right there. That's when we brought him out. He came out, everybody screamed and roared.
Because for the last 22 years, I was wearing a uniform. So this put me back in my own clothes and made me feel like I was free again. So, you know, my family gave Bobby some money and he went and bought me a nice suit.
And I'm basing, you know, because I didn't know how big he was or anything like that, I'm basing it all upon me because of my height, my body frame, you know. So the suit was a little big. We didn't have a belt for him. His pants was falling off a little bit.
It was a little big, you know, but I feel good. To make me feel like I'm not a number anymore. Walking out that courtroom is a feeling that I can never explain, and really, even when I see myself in you know, on the video after 9 years now. My brother told me, you know, when I got outside and put my fist in the air, he said, you know, Al, that's when I knew that you was free though, because you know, it was your expression. You know, I didn't scream and holler, I just threw my hands and said, you know, because it felt good to actually walk out that courtroom.
I stood in the background as he walked out, and I let him have his moment as he walked out the courtroom. Bobby, you know, security ran up and greeted him and made sure he cleared a path for him. But I stood out of his way and let him have his moment. You know, that was his moment, not mine. That was his moment.
I'll never forget that moment. That moment is in my head forever.
That was a great moment. It is that kind of moment that all of us, you know, work for here at the Innocence Project, because there's nothing better than being part of getting an innocent person out of prison.
Well, lo and behold, 11 years later, when somebody actually got up and went to the barrel exactly where that evidence was supposed to be, they found it.
Had they produced the evidence when he asked for it, he would have been cleared in '94.
My brother Tony Newton right here. Whatever happened, whenever I got down, I was able to call him on the phone, kept my spirits up for 22 years.
I never doubted him. That's why I never gave up. I told him he's my hero. I admire him for what he did, and everybody else that I know admire him for what he's been through. Because we all say we don't know mentally we could have done the same thing.
He told me that a few times, that I'm his hero. But he don't know at the end of the day that I couldn't do this without them. I couldn't do this without my family. I would never. Excuse me. Whew, boy, got emotional then. I would have never been able to do this without my family. I would have never been able to do this.
On July 6th, 2006, he was released from prison. After 22 years of detention, he found himself penniless, jobless, without help from the state, in a world that had no resemblance to the one he knew. A world where he would have to start from scratch.
Oh, the world has changed. The world has changed so much, but I love it though. I worked with computers before I went to jail as a bank teller and a customer service rep. But I was not ready for the cell phones, the gadgets that talk to you, that, you know, that do everything for you nowadays, but never understood how they work. And like I always tell people, can you hear me now? I never understood what it meant when a commercial was on, when I saw it with the cell phones. But the first time I came home, I'm in a dead spot. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Oh, that's what the commercial means. And, you know.
And matter of fact, I got to cut him off because he ran up a phone bill, a cell phone bill, over $1,000 in 1 month because he didn't know there was limits on the usage of the phone. When you think about it, you was in so long that I was able to get married 2 times and have a son.
That's right.
You know, and my son, and you made it to his graduation.
That's right, that's right.
Just figure, my son is 26. When he was in jail the whole time that my son was from kindergarten to 12th grade. Al came home, my son was just graduating from high school. Go figure.
So the world is a vastly different place than it was 20-something years ago when I went in.
When he came home, the adjustment for him was kind of rough because I recall him telling me that for him to come out of the building and go across the street, he was like a little nervous and paranoid, you know, seeing so many people in the cars coming past and stuff like that. So it was hard for him to adjust.
I mean, another thing I had to get used to was drinking, you know, like cold liquids again because we didn't have access to a refrigerator. We didn't have access to ice. And, you know, this may sound crazy, but actually I used to, you know, cool stuff in the toilet bowl. The toilet bowl was used like a freezer. When the toilet bowl was also used to wash clothes. I mean, those things that sound abnormal to people that's out here, but in jail, that's something normal. And I had to readjust myself when I came home. Al, you don't have to put your soda in there. You got an ice box now, you got a washing machine, but you still feel that urge. How many evenings have I missed? 2 decades worth. I mean, too many at the end of the day. And
Indeed, in 22 years, many events had troubled the world, such as the destruction of the World Trade Center, where Alan worked before being imprisoned, but also more personal and painful events that he wasn't able to share with his family.
my mom's actually passed away 2 years after I was convicted and imprisoned. And this is where she was buried, in Linden, New Jersey. For those 20+ years before I was exonerated, I was never able to mourn properly when my mom's had passed away. Because being in the penitentiary, you know, you can't really show any sign of weakness, even when, you know, your parents pass away and didn't have anybody really there to grieve with. That's why, you know, one of the things I really wanted to, you know, go to my mom's grave and my dad's grave when I came home, and because I never really got the chance to really speak with them and say goodbye.
You know, I had to remind him and my other brother that before my mother passed in '86, she told me she was proud of me and my brothers. So I had to remind them because she never got a chance to tell them that. So I had to remind him that your mother was proud of you also.
I usually try not to show any weakness. This hurts though. I feel like a fresh pain all the time though. Oh boy. They let me go to a wake. They kept me there handcuffed for about an hour and didn't even get to sit there for the full hour, you know, after like 45, 50 minutes. And part of, you know, the 10 minutes was getting ready to leave, and that's the way they judged the whole hour. So it was something though. It was better than nothing. But just keep my fight though. Just help me keep fighting though, because if I give up, I'll be letting my moms down, and she always knew that I was gonna be set free though. So, you know, I'll fight for her as well as fighting for myself though.
One of the battles that Alan wanted to take on after his release was to continue his studies that he had started in prison. A foundation granted him a scholarship to join the university. and enabled him to get a new diploma, far away from prison this time.
Every day I'm proud of him because the way he carries himself. You know, he went back to school, got another degree, and graduated from Medgar College, business degree.
Well, it was my family there, my brother Tony, my sisters, nieces, and nephews. Had my friend Bobby there. I mean, it was a great day. It was a great moment just getting that, you know, being able to get that certificate, that degree outside of prison and being able to do it before my family and friends at the same time.
Well, this time we all went home together. You know, we didn't have to leave him. That's what was better. This time we didn't have to leave him there. We all left together. You know, that's what was great.
I think that Alan has an inner strength that it's inexplicable. Where does it come from? How did he develop it? I don't know. You know, many people who go to prison commit suicide. They lose their mind. They end up being on psychotic medication. You know, it's an experience that in America is designed to break you down, and a lot of people can't make it through. So Alan's strength and determination and the way that he just kept going, I mean, it's really remarkable.
2 years after his release, Alan got a job as a sociology research associate at CUNY, got married, and even became a dad. Finally serene, he was able to focus on his second fight. This time, a legal fight to obtain compensation for the 2 decades of his life he had lost.
So about 4 years ago, a jury in New York awarded Alan over $18 million for his years of wrongful imprisonment. And yet, 4 years later, Alan has not received 1 penny of compensation. So he's still in a state of limbo. It's not guaranteed that he'll get the money, although it seems pretty inconceivable that someone could suffer what he did and not get any compensation.
But you will pay him. So no, he hasn't gotten it yet, you know. But you know, he's being patient. That's one of the reasons I look up to him because you know, I've seen him mad once or twice. I've been mad 100 times since he's been home. I've seen him mad once or twice. That's good. For somebody who's did 22 years, I'd be mad every day. Even if I got paid, I'd still be mad because I missed out on 22 years. You know, he's a better man than I am. I told him I look up to him. He's my hero, you know, because I'd still be mad. I am still mad, you know.
Getting compensated would allow me to do some of the things I want to do. The plan is to go back to law school and get that law degree. And you know, I want to be able to help people that may find themselves in the same similar situation.
I think it's amazing. I said to Alan, go back, get your law degree, and I will join your law office. I think he would be an incredible lawyer.
Yes, Al can be anything he wants to be. If he wants to be an attorney, he'll be a great attorney.
You know, my life is something like for the last 9 years since I've been home, every moment is a joy, every day is a joy. So everything to me feels great all the time, every moment, you know, even on rainy days like this, though. The thing about Vanessa and the Innocence Project is they're more than just attorneys. It's their family and friends because one of the things about them, even after they get us released and exonerated, they don't just disappear and go on to the next case. I don't even, you know, look at them as lawyers and, you know, I look at them as people that I can call in the middle of the night and, you know, cry and laugh. And that's what makes them different. That's what, you know, makes them stick out, you know.
The police officer came to my mother's home and they arrested me, you know, and for the murder of my best friend.
When I got arrested, I kept on saying I was innocent. What are you doing? What are you doing?
You gotta let him go. That's not him.
I kept fighting for my freedom for 34 years, you know, after so many letdowns.
I believe that one day they would come and say, you know, we made a mistake, we were wrong, and let me go.